Blood struck the marble before Elena's silver tray hit the floor. I heard the crystal glasses shatter beneath the string quartet's final note, a bright, brittle sound that sliced through the Moretti ballroom. Elena stood beneath the chandelier with one hand pressed to her nose, red spilling between her fingers and spotting the white Carrara stone. Around her, 200 guests fell silent. Champagne chilled the air with its yeasty sweetness, mingling with beeswax, expensive perfume, and the sharp metallic scent of blood. "Open her pocket," the head housekeeper ordered. Elena stared at her. "Mrs. Voss, I didn't take anything." Mrs. Voss seized the pocket of Elena's black uniform and turned it inside out. A diamond bracelet dropped onto the floor. Gasps rippled beneath the vaulted ceiling. Elena looked down at the bracelet as if it were something alive. "That isn't mine." "Of course it isn't," Mrs. Voss said, loud enough for every capo, politician, and banker in the room to hear. "It belongs to Mrs. Bellini. You stole it." I watched Elena's gaze move across the guests, searching for one face willing to believe her. No one stepped forward. A server beside her lowered his eyes. Mrs. Bellini touched her bare wrist and whispered something to her husband. Elena bent to retrieve the bracelet, but the floor seemed to tilt beneath her. Her knees folded. I reached her before her head struck the stone. Her skin felt cold against my palm, yet perspiration shone along her temples. "Call Dr. Russo," I said. The quartet had stopped. Even the fireplace seemed suddenly too loud, each split log cracking in the silence. Mrs. Voss began explaining that Elena had been acting strangely for weeks, but I raised one finger. She stopped mid-word. Elena's eyelids fluttered. "I didn't steal it," she breathed. "Save your strength. Please, Mr. Moretti. I need this job." Dr. Russo arrived from the East Wing, carrying a leather medical case. He knelt, loosened Elena's collar, and checked her pulse while my security men moved the guests away. Elena tried to sit up. "I can work." "Stay still," the doctor said. His stethoscope was cold enough to make her flinch. He asked when she had last eaten, whether she had been dizzy, whether the bleeding had happened before. Her answers became quieter with each question. When he asked about her last menstrual cycle, her fingers tightened around the white linen napkin beneath her nose. Mrs. Voss gave a small, contemptuous laugh. Dr. Russo looked up at her. "Leave." She did not move until I turned my head. Then her heels clicked across the marble and vanished behind the oak doors. Dr. Russo took blood, ran a rapid test from his case, and waited beneath the chandelier's hard gold light. Elena watched the small device in his hand. I watched her. The result appeared in less than 3 minutes. The doctor exhaled slowly. "The fainting was likely caused by exhaustion and low blood sugar," he said. Then he lowered his voice, though the room was quiet enough to carry every syllable. "She's pregnant." Elena closed her eyes. Not surprise. Recognition. That was what changed the air. I looked at the servers, guards, and men wearing my crest on their cufflinks. Someone inside my house had gotten close enough to a woman under my protection to leave her carrying his child, and frightened enough to conceal it. Heat climbed beneath my collar, but my voice came out level. "Lock the gates. No one leaves." Steel bolts slid into place throughout the mansion. Elena opened her eyes and looked directly at me. There was no plea in them now, only a truth I had not yet demanded. "Everyone out," I said. "Except her." The doors closed, leaving Elena and me alone beneath the chandelier, with blood on the marble and one question burning behind my teeth. The chandelier hummed above the sealed room, its crystals scattering pale light across the wine-dark stain on the marble. Beyond the doors, muffled footsteps retreated down the corridor. Then the mansion settled into a silence broken only by the slow ticking of the antique clock. Adrian crossed to the doors and turned the brass key himself. The clicks sounded final. When he faced Elena, she was sitting upright on the edge of the velvet settee, one hand pressed against her abdomen. Her other hand gripped the cushion hard enough to whiten her knuckles. A strand of hair clung to the perspiration at her temple. "Look at me," Adrian said. Elena raised her eyes. The anger he had carried across negotiation tables and burial grounds was familiar to every man in the Moretti organization. But this was not the cold fury that came before punishment. It was hotter, less controlled, born from the thought that someone beneath his roof had crossed a boundary he believed sacred. Adrian pulled a linen handkerchief from his pocket and set it beside her, careful not to touch her. "Did someone threaten you?" Her gaze never moved. No. Did someone force you to keep quiet? No. Each answer stripped away the explanation he had already chosen. Adrian's jaw tightened. He stepped toward the fireplace, where cedar logs snapped beneath a carved stone mantel. Heat pressed against his suit while the rest of the room remained cold. Then give me his name. Elena rose slowly. The movement cost her. Her fingertips brushed the settee for balance before she stood without support. Why? Because he worked in my house, ate at my table, and hid behind my protection. Adrian turned. If he used his position against you, he answers to me. And if he didn't? The question landed softly, yet it checked him more effectively than a raised weapon. Elena crossed the marble until only the long dining table separated them. 6 months of guarded glances, unfinished sentences, and careful distance seemed to occupy every empty chair. Adrian planted both palms on the polished mahogany. The surface was cool beneath his skin. Who got you pregnant? Elena inhaled once. No trembling now. No lowered eyes. By answering, she risked more than employment or reputation. She placed the truth of her body against the word of the most powerful man in the room, knowing he could deny her and leave her with nothing. Still, she moved around the table and stopped directly in front of him. You did. The clock ticked. A log collapsed in the fireplace with a shower of sparks. Adrian did not blink. His fingers slowly lifted from the table, as if the wood had burned him. The single night her answer pointed toward rows in broken fragments. Rain against tall windows, pain burning through his side, Elena's voice somewhere in the darkness. Then emptiness. Morning had come with him alone, his shirt changed, his wound dressed, and his security chief insisting Elena had never entered the room. Adrian had accepted that account because his own memory contained nothing he could challenge it with. That never happened, he said, but the words lacked the force of a denial. Elena's chin lifted. You don't remember it. I would remember. You should. Her reply left no room for mercy and no trace of apology. Adrian searched her face for calculation, fear, any sign that she had chosen him as the safest name available. What he found was worse, certainty. The locked doors no longer made Elena his prisoner. Her answer had reversed the room, placing him inside a missing night and making her the only person holding the way out. If you're telling the truth, he said quietly, then someone made me believe you weren't there. Elena reached toward the pocket of her uniform. Adrian's eyes followed her hand as she closed her fingers around something concealed inside the fabric. I can prove where I was, she said. But first, you need to understand why your own memory is lying to you. A soft metallic click crossed the locked dining room as Elena placed a silver cuff link on the mahogany table. One edge was scratched, and a dark rust-colored stain clung beneath the Moretti crest. Cold rain tapped the tall windows while candle wax and spilled wine scented the air. Adrian stepped closer. His thumb moved instinctively toward the empty buttonhole on his left cuff. That belongs to a pair made for me in Milan, he said. Elena kept her hands flat on the table. You were wearing it 6 months ago. Adrian picked it up. The metal felt cold against his palm, yet a fragment of sensation flashed through him. Wet pavement beneath his back, pressure against his ribs, Elena ordering him to stay awake. Then the image vanished. Where did you get this? From the floor beside you. Elena unlocked her phone and opened an audio file dated 2:17 a.m. On the night he had been wounded. I recorded it because you told me not to trust anyone who came for you. She pressed play. Rain hissed through the small speaker. A car alarm pulsed somewhere in the distance, followed by Elena's breathless voice. The bleeding has slowed. I'm taking you through the service entrance. Then Adrian's own voice emerged, weakened but unmistakable. No guards. They knew the route. His fingers tightened around the cuff link. On the recording, fabric tore, a door slammed, and he whispered Elena's name. Not maid. Not employee. Elena. The file ended with a second voice in the distance announcing that the security cameras had been disabled. Silence settled over the polished silver and abandoned champagne glasses. You brought me home, Adrian said. I kept you alive until Dr. Russo arrived. My security report says I was found alone in the east garage. Then the report is false. Adrian crossed to the wall console and entered his private code. The security archive illuminated his face in blue-white light. He selected the date. Midnight appeared. Then 12:01. Every camera inside the mansion jumped forward to 6 a.m. No static. No system failure. 6 hours had been cleanly removed. Adrian pulled up the medical access log. The screen showed that he had been treated, but Elena's entry badge had never crossed the gate. He checked again, slower. The same impossible emptiness stared back. Your badge was erased, he said. Elena reached for the cuff link, but Adrian closed his hand around it. Not just mine. The next morning, I was told never to speak about what happened. When I refused, Mrs. Bellini warned me that people who contradicted Moretti records disappeared. Adrian's gaze shifted toward the locked doors through which the guests had departed. Beyond them, faint footsteps moved along the corridor, then stopped. Someone was listening. He killed the screen, crossed the room, and opened the door without warning. The hallway stood empty beneath amber sconces, carrying only the fading trace of expensive cologne. Adrian returned and set the cuff link beside Elena's phone. The blood can be tested. The recording can be authenticated. But whoever erased 6 hours from my house had access to my guards, my physician, and my private archive. Elena's eyes remained steady. And to whatever they gave you afterward. A muscle moved along Adrian's jaw. One piece of the night had been returned to him, but its absence now had a shape, and that shape stood inside his own organization. He picked up the house phone. Seal the archive room, he ordered. No one touches the medical files. Then he looked at Elena, no longer as a subordinate making an impossible claim, but as the only witness someone had tried to erase. Until I know who altered my mind, he said, you do not leave this house. Elena slid her phone back into her pocket. Then decide quickly whether you're protecting me, she replied, or imprisoning the mother of your child. Cold rain tapped against the sealed windows, each drop sharp in the silence of the dining room. The fire had burned low, leaving the marble floor cold beneath Elena's shoes. Adrian set down the house phone. There is one way to establish the truth. Dr. Russo entered moments later carrying a black medical case. The brass clasps snapped open, and the clean scent of antiseptic displaced the fading perfume from the party. Adrian's gaze remained on Elena. A paternity test. Tonight. Her fingers tightened around the edge of her uniform sleeve. You heard the recording. You saw what was erased. I saw proof that you saved my life, Adrian said. Not proof that the child is mine. The words landed without volume, harder for their restraint. Elena studied him beneath the amber chandelier light, then rolled up her sleeve. Take the sample. Dr. Russo swabbed the inside of her cheek and sealed the tube. Adrian submitted his own sample without looking away. Until the results return, you'll stay in the East guest suite, he said. 2 guards outside. No unscreened calls. No contact with anyone beyond this house. A pale envelope slid from his jacket onto the mahogany table. Inside lay enough cash to buy months of silence and comfort. Elena did not touch it. You call locked doors protection because no one has ever locked them around you. Someone erased you from my records, Adrian replied. Now they know you can restore what they buried. And your answer is to erase me again. She removed her Moretti staff pin and placed it beside the envelope. The tiny piece of silver clicked against the wood. Adrian's hand closed over the back of a chair. If you walk outside those gates, I cannot guarantee your safety. Elena folded the stained cuff of her uniform over the place where Dr. Russo had taken the sample. You cannot doubt my word, confine my body, and pay me for the privilege. Adrian moved toward the door first, blocking the brass handle. For one suspended second, firelight sharpened his shadow across the floor. Then Elena held out her phone. If I stay because you ordered it, every result afterward belongs to your power. If I leave, the truth remains mine. The lock disengaged beneath Adrian's thumb. No command followed. Elena crossed the entrance hall beneath the watch of silent guards, carrying only her coat and phone. The mansion doors opened onto wet wind and the mineral smell of rain. Behind her, the cash remained untouched and her staff pin gleamed beneath the chandelier. A cab's tires hissed over the black driveway as it took her beyond the gates. Adrian stood beneath the stone portico until the red taillights vanished. Inside Elena's coat pocket, her phone vibrated before the car reached the highway. An unknown number had sent a photograph taken less than a minute earlier. Elena stepping into the cab, one hand resting protectively over her stomach. Beneath it were 6 words. The Moretti heir is finally exposed. Elena looked through the rain-streaked rear window. A dark sedan had already pulled away from the curb behind them. By refusing Adrian's cage, she had kept her dignity. Now someone else knew exactly what that dignity might cost. The cab's turn signal clicked beneath the hiss of tires on soaked asphalt. In the rear window, the dark sedan held its distance through every turn, its headlights smearing across the rain like two pale knives. Elena lowered her phone, then noticed the driver's navigation screen reflecting against the glass. A calendar notification had appeared beneath the map, an automatic reminder forwarded from the cab company's corporate account. The sender's name tightened her fingers around the door handle. Adrian's private attorney. Elena had seen the same initials hundreds of times while carrying sealed envelopes through the Moretti mansion. The reminder contained a location, 11:40 p.m., and 3 words, Moretti route confirmed. "Take the next exit," she said. The driver glanced at the sedan behind them. "Ma'am, your destination is downtown." "Not anymore." She photographed the screen, forwarded the image to herself, then asked him to stop beneath the fluorescent canopy of an all-night gas station. The air outside smelled of gasoline and wet concrete. While the sedan rolled past and circled the block, Elena stepped between 2 delivery trucks and opened the attached calendar chain. The attorney had not merely shared a meeting place. He had sold Adrian's departure time, vehicle order, an alternate route to the rival family waiting near the river underpass. Adrian was scheduled to leave the mansion in 17 minutes. Elena could have disappeared through the service alley. Instead, she called him. No answer. She tried the mansion's security desk. A clipped voice demanded identification, then disconnected when she gave her name. Mrs. Bellini's warning returned with brutal clarity. Never contradict the official Moretti records. Elena looked at the photograph of her hand over her unborn child, then at the route marked in red. Running would protect neither of them. She flagged down a rideshare, gave the driver the mansion address, and watched the dark sedan swing back toward her just as the car pulled away. 9 minutes later, iron gates rose through sheets of silver rain. Elena jumped out before the vehicle stopped. Guards reached beneath their jackets, but she held up her phone and shouted Adrian's route, departure time, and the river underpass. The front doors opened. Adrian appeared under amber light, coat buttoned, keys already in hand. "You left," he said, "and you were right to unlock that door." Elena crossed the wet stone and pressed the phone against his chest. "But your attorney sold tonight's schedule." Adrian read the calendar chain once. His jaw locked. A convoy was already idling beyond the courtyard, engines rumbling through the cold air. He seized a radio. "Cancel the river route. Send the empty lead vehicle through alone. Move everyone else east." Minutes later, distant sirens rose beyond the trees. A guard's voice crackled through the radio. Vehicles had boxed in the decoy beneath the underpass. No Moretti passengers were inside. Adrian turned toward Elena. Rain shone on her lashes. One palm rested against the stone column to steady herself. "You came back after I treated you like a suspect." "I came back because doubt doesn't make you guilty," she said. "Betrayal does." His gaze dropped to the phone, where another notification had appeared. The calendar chain had registered Elena's access and transmitted her location to its owner. Across the road, the dark sedan stopped beneath a dead street lamp. Its rear door opened. Adrian moved toward Elena, but this time she stepped in front of him and faced the gates. "Get inside," he ordered. Her eyes remained fixed on the figure emerging through the rain. "No, they followed me here, and I'm done letting other people decide where I'm allowed to stand." Rain rattled against the iron gates as the figure from the sedan stopped beneath the security lights. One gloved hand raised to show a phone instead of a weapon. Its screen glowed through the downpour. A recording began to play over the gate intercom, distorted by static but unmistakable. "Tell Moretti the child is his," Adrian's private attorney said, "and neither of them reaches the delivery room." The wet stone reflected Adrian's silhouette as he went perfectly still. Elena did not. She stepped closer to the intercom, her soaked dress clinging cold against her shoulders, and pressed the button before any guard could stop her. "I heard that threat 6 weeks after I learned I was pregnant," she said. The stranger outside lowered the phone. Adrian's voice came quiet behind her. "You knew who was behind this." "I knew someone with access to your house was watching me. I didn't know which one." Warm light spilled from the foyer, carrying the scent of extinguished candles and rain-damp wool. Elena turned to face him. Mrs. Bellini warned me that contradicting the official Moretti records could get me killed. Then an envelope appeared under my apartment door. Inside was a photograph of my first prenatal appointment and a note promising the baby would die if you learned you were the father. Adrian's jaw tightened, but Elena lifted a hand, stopping the command forming on his lips. This was hers to finish. That's why I stayed silent. Not because I was ashamed of the child. Not because I wanted your money. I believed ignorance was the only protection I could give our baby. Beyond the gates, the stranger returned to the sedan. Its tires whispered across the flooded road and vanished into the blackness. No attack followed. The message had been delivered. Adrian reached for Elena, then let his hand fall before touching her. You should have told me. Elena pulled the Moretti staff pin from her pocket, the one she had removed when she resigned, and placed it on the marble console. Metal clicked against stone. Entrusted the house whose records erased me? Her gaze held his. No more private rooms. No more sealed settlements. I'll give a sworn statement naming the threat, the recording, and every warning I received. Adrian's expression changed. Once that statement enters the record, every rival family will know you're carrying my child. They already know. You'll lose your privacy. Your employment history will be dragged through the press. You may need protection for years. Then let them see what silence costs. Elena crossed to the security desk, took the house phone, and called the federal prosecutor whose number Adrian kept for emergencies no Moretti was ever supposed to admit existed. When the line connected, her fingers trembled once against the black receiver. Then they steadied. My name is Elena, she said. I'm prepared to testify publicly about a threat against my unborn child and a conspiracy inside the Moretti organization. Adrian moved beside her, not in front, not as her jailer, but close enough that their reflections shared the dark window. By sunrise, Elena would have no job, no anonymity, and nowhere left to disappear. When she ended the call, the prosecutor had given them 1 hour to arrive with every piece of evidence. Adrian looked toward the locked archive corridor, where the erased night still waited behind steel doors. If your testimony is true, he said, someone didn't only threaten our child. They stole 6 hours of my life. The grandfather clock struck midnight. 1 hour had already begun to vanish. The archive clock clicked past 12 as cold fluorescent light spread across shelves of sealed ledgers, and dust filmed the air like ash. Adrian slid the erased medical log beneath a scanner, but Elena reached past him and pressed the intercom button connected to the mansion clinic. Dr. Russo, open the restricted physician registry, she said. Search every doctor admitted here the night Mr. Moretti was wounded. Russo's reply crackled through the speaker. One temporary credential surfaced. Dr. Samuel Varga, a private neurologist whose entry had been authorized by Adrian's private attorney. No departure had been recorded. Adrian called the number attached to the license. A ringing phone answered from behind a locked door at the far end of the archive corridor. The hinges groaned when security opened it. Inside, beneath a yellow desk lamp, an older man sat beside 2 packed suitcases and a metal medical case. Antiseptic cut through the room's stale heat. Varga did not reach for the door. He placed both hands flat on the table. I was told you'd kill me if I spoke. Adrian remained in the doorway, his coat dark with rain, while Elena stepped inside first. She set the blood-stained Moretti cuff link beside the medical case. Then speak to me. Varga's gaze dropped to her stomach. The last resistance left his face. From the case, he removed a paper chart bearing Adrian's name and a glass vial with a faded pharmacy label. 6 months earlier, after Elena had carried the wounded Adrian through the service entrance, Varga had been ordered to inject him with a drug capable of disrupting the formation of short-term memories. The medication had not erased an existing life. It had prevented 6 hours from settling into one. Were we together willingly? Elena asked. Her voice stayed level, but her thumb pressed hard against the cuff link's sharp edge. Varga nodded. You refused to leave him. Mr. Moretti asked everyone else to go. Later, I examined him before the injection. There were no signs of coercion, restraint, or impaired judgment before I treated him. Adrian crossed the room and activated Varga's old clinical recorder. Static hissed, followed by Adrian's own weakened voice from that night. Elena stays because I asked her to. Whatever happens next is my choice. A chair scraped behind him. Adrian gripped its leather back until the stitching creaked. Then the recording captured another voice. the private attorneys, ordering Varga to administer the drug and alter the chart. The reason came in one quiet sentence. No new Moretti heir could be allowed to disrupt the succession plan already being sold to the rival family. Elena closed her eyes for a single breath. When she opened them, Adrian was no longer looking at her, as though her truth required permission from his blood test. He took Varga's signed chart, the vial, and the recorder, then handed all three to Elena. The movement placed the evidence, and the next choice, in her hands. Your memory was stolen, she said. Mine was turned into something you could doubt. Somewhere above them, heavy footsteps entered the mansion foyer. Dr. Russo's voice burst through the intercom. The sealed paternity result had arrived, but so had representatives of the Moretti family demanding Elena be surrendered before dawn. Adrian looked toward the ceiling as the chandelier overhead trembled faintly with each approaching step. Then he opened the archive safe and drew out the black ledgers that could destroy everything bearing his name. Let them wait, he said. Tonight, they learn what their succession cost. Rainwater slid down the foyer windows, breaking the security lights into silver veins across the marble floor. Beyond the oak doors, Moretti representatives murmured beneath the metallic click of guards checking their weapons. Adrian entered carrying the black ledgers against his chest. Elena followed with Dr. Varga's vial, altered chart, and recorder sealed inside a clear evidence bag. At the dining table where powerful men had once toasted Adrian's authority, a federal prosecutor waited beside two agents. The air smelled of wet wool, old cigar smoke, and coffee gone cold. Protection for Elena and the child, Adrian said, setting the ledgers down. Legal protection. New identities if necessary. No Moretti custody, no family supervision, and no arrangement made without her consent. The prosecutor rested one hand on the worn leather cover. These books implicate your organization, and you. Adrian opened the first ledger. Pages whispered beneath his fingers, each column preserving a crime that loyalty had kept buried. That is why they have value. Elena placed her evidence beside it. And my testimony belongs to me, she said. Not to his bargain. The prosecutor turned toward her. Elena did not lower her eyes. She agreed to testify only if the agreement recognized her as a protected witness rather than Moretti property. Adrian signed first. The scratch of his pen seemed louder than the rain. Elena signed next, making protection her choice instead of another locked room. Then Adrian called his captains into the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers burned above a long table, their warmth unable to soften the stone faces gathering around it. Mrs. Bellini stood near the service doors, silent beneath her stiff black collar, while Mr. Bellini watched from among the remaining guests. Adrian's private attorney arrived last, his polished shoes leaving dark prints across the gold carpet. You erased my memory to control the succession, Adrian said. The attorney's gaze flicked toward the evidence bag, then the federal agents. His hand moved toward his coat. Adrian's guard stepped between him and the exit. No weapons were drawn. None were needed. Elena pressed the recorder's button. Through a wash of static came the attorney's unmistakable voice, instructing Dr. Samuel Varga to prevent 6 hours of memory from forming and warning that a new heir would destroy the rival family agreement. The attorney's face emptied of color. Adrian removed the Moretti signet ring from his finger and placed it beside the ledgers. Take him into custody, he ordered. His own security chief restrained the attorney and surrendered him to the agents. Around the table, men who had once feared Adrian's anger now stared at the ring as if it were a fallen crown. Adrian faced them without it. Elena told the truth. I doubted her because someone built a lie strong enough to resemble my own memory. Every threat made against her or our child ends tonight. He pushed the ledgers across the table to the prosecutor, surrendering routes, accounts, names, and the machinery that had made his commands absolute. Phones began vibrating along the table as frozen accounts and federal warrants struck the Moretti network. Adrian's security clearance disappeared from the wall monitors. The mansion no longer answered solely to him. An agent approached with handcuffs. The prosecutor did not offer immunity, only consideration for cooperation and immediate protection for Elena. Adrian extended his wrists. Elena moved once, stopping an inch from his sleeve, but did not ask the agents to spare him. He had finally given her something larger than protection, the right not to defend the man who had failed to believe her. Cold steel closed around his hands. As the family representatives were escorted from the room, Dr. Russo entered carrying the sealed paternity report. Adrian could no longer command anyone to open it. He looked at Elena instead. Beneath the chandelier's hard white light, she held the envelope that could name him a father while federal agents prepared to take him away. "The answer belongs to you now," he said. Elena slipped one finger beneath the seal. Paper fibers whispered beneath Elena's thumb as the seal broke. Beyond the ballroom windows, federal vehicles washed the wet courtyard in pulses of blue and white, while the chandelier cast a hard sheen across Adrian's handcuffs. Elena unfolded the report without asking permission from the prosecutor, the agents, or the Moretti men watching beside the service doors. Her eyes moved once across the page. Then she crossed the marble floor and placed the document against Adrian's restrained hands. "Probability of paternity, 99.99%, she read. No one moved. Near the doorway, Mrs. Bellini pressed her knuckles to her lips. Mr. Bellini lowered his gaze. Adrian stared at the printed number as if it weighed more than every ledger he had surrendered. The fury that had once sharpened his question was gone. What remained was a man unable to hide behind missing memories, inherited authority, or the black ring no longer on his finger. "You told me the truth," he said, his voice rough against the quiet. "And I made you prove it." Elena took the report back. "The test proves biology. It does not decide what kind of father you become." An agent shifted beside Adrian, the leather of his holster creaking. Their transport was waiting. Time no longer belonged to the master of the mansion. Adrian turned toward the assembled family representatives before they could be led away. "Elena is not Moretti property. Neither is our child. No debt, name, or tradition gives this family a claim over them." The prosecutor watched without intervening. Those words could not reduce Adrian's charges or reopen his accounts. They purchased nothing. That was why they mattered. Elena stepped to the prosecutor's table, where the protection agreement rested beneath a brass lamp. She struck out the clause allowing Moretti-appointed security to control her residence, wrote in her right to select independent protection, and signed her name. The prosecutor examined the change, then added his initials. Effective immediately, Elena had not accepted a cage with softer walls. She had chosen safety without surrender. Adrian's shoulders lowered by a fraction. "I won't ask you to wait for me," he said. "I won't ask the child to carry my name. If I am ever allowed into that life, it will be because I earned the invitation." Elena folded the paternity report and placed it inside her coat, close to the quiet life beneath her heart. Then she reached for the signet ring lying beside the ledgers. Its black stone was cold, its gold edges worn smooth by generations of command. Adrian watched as she set it inside the open evidence case and closed the lid. "Our child will know who you were," she said, "but also what you chose when the truth finally cost you everything." The agents guided Adrian toward the doors. At the threshold, Elena called his name. He stopped but did not turn until she continued. "When the baby is born, I'll send word. What happens after that depends on the man who walks out of prison, not the boss entering it." Adrian faced her then, wrists bound, empire gone, and nodded without bargaining. The ballroom remained silent as he was taken into the cold dawn. Months later, his first letter arrived at Elena's protected home with no commands, excuses, or promises of power. Only an apology and one question. "What does our child need from me?" Elena placed the letter beside the sealed report, rested her hand over the gentle movement beneath her ribs, and began to write back. And that day, he learned that fatherhood was not proven by blood, but earned through humility.